All right, welcome to a new show with Injury Time. It's Football Fortnight, and this will be a bi-weekly show. That means once in 2 weeks. And with me, this is going to be a show between me and Prad, and Prad has so graciously agreed to join us. Prad, thank you so much for doing this.
No, thanks. It's been overdue, I think, long time, and it's good to catch up now and keep abreast of all the changes that are happening in football at the moment in India.
Yes, so the idea of this is to have a hot take, quick conversation, not too long. So we'll go topic by topic. So let's start with the AIFF, All India Football Federation, no longer functioning as it should be, with the COA taking charge of it. So, Pratt, you're looking at it from the outside, and we are looking at it from the outside. What do you think is the situation there? FIFA ban and all is being told. I don't think that's going to happen, but still, you never know.
No, I think at least the threat of the bans made things happen, and things are moving, I think, in the right direction. I mean, it's good to see. It'll force certain changes which had to happen to bring in line with the sports code, and I think the trickle-down effect that it'll change the state association is just as important as well. So I think for any changes to happen in the long term in Indian football, it has to happen at a regional level, and almost like we always keep talking about, at a hyper-regional level. So if there's that trickle-down effect where district FAs improve, state associations improve, then naturally that'll feed into a much better and much more functioning AIFF. And I think that's good for every stakeholder involved in Indian football at every aspect of it.
So from the outside, as someone who's covered the sport, I think this is a much needed cleanup. But I'm not very sure that this is going to be a start of something new. It could be a start of something similar but different. Is that a concern as well?
Well, I think, look, there's a lot of rumors and hearsay going on in the media, social media, especially about some of the things that have been happening behind the scenes at AIFF, and some of them are starting to get exposed, like the whole astrologer thing, and the travel agent scams, and et cetera, et cetera. So if a lot of that comes to light and gets exposed, and the people who are responsible for it are held accountable for it, I think even if it's, as you said, it's a change of faces, not a complete change of the whole system, I think the fact that people are now being held accountable for things should make changes, because then people should be afraid in the future of doing such things, or know that someone is watching, because there's also apparently a CAG audit as well happening. So I'm sure a lot more will be unearthed, because all these years, like all of us who've been involved in football know these things are happening, and you kind of just chuckle, grin and bear it and get on with it, saying that's just part of the system. That's how coaches are appointed for certain position, or that's what happens on these exposure tours where it's supposedly for gaining experience, but we all know what it's really about. So now the fact that people are being questioned for it in the future, people will have to think twice before doing all this kind of creative accounting or whatever. And also, if that stops, then things start to get used, and the funds and the allocation gets used in the right way. So, to put it in a simple terms, I'd much rather see us having 5 under, let's say, 16 teams in India, 1 per each region, where 5 coaches can be employed throughout the years, coaching their respective zones, and they play against one another regularly. And then, the best coach amongst that gets elevated to the national team, let's say under 16 coach for that particular age group. And the funds are allocated that way, instead of just 25 kids getting the tag of under 16 India team and being training in one particular zone for 1 year. You've got 5 times that much. So you've got 125 kids being given proper coaching, proper facilities across different zones, and the opportunity at each moment to fight for it. So it's not as if you're selected for under 16 and that's it. I'm an under 16 player till I turn under 17. It's a continuous assessment process where every few months, maybe more teams from the south, more players from the south zone get elevated, because the tournament happens to be at a time when certain teams were peaking. And rather than, let's go play a team that's supposedly Argentina, or some team that's wearing the Italian jersey, and come back saying, we beat Italy. So I think that's a better way to allocate the funds. If that happens, then great. I think that's good for everybody in Indian football.
Yes, let's also hope that an under 17 player stops playing after he turns 18. So that's also another whole can of worms that we need to do. So now, national team. Igor Simic got the team into the Asian Cup, something that I always thought he would, and he should. What do you make of the performance of the team? what do you make of the situation that they find themselves in? The coach having his contract is up in September. Can they offer a new contract? Is the first question. So yesterday he spoke a little bit. So what do you think? And he's putting pressure. Huh? Stimaj is putting pressure on AIFF with his own press conferences on the side. And yeah, so
look, he should. I mean, he's delivered. Yeah, he should. He's like any other coach. When you're on a coach, they always say when you're in the job is the best time you start looking for your other job. And when you're winning is when you start negotiating to get more and get better. And I think this is where, like, when you do club contracts for coaches, you normally put in certain caveats that if you qualify for this, then the extension triggers. Or you've seen ISL teams where there was one team in the ISL last year where if they finished top 4, then the coach's second year would have been extended for a second year. Whereas if they don't finish in the playoffs, then the club had the option not to renew that coach. So it begs the question, why don't they do that with national team coaches? That if based on performance, if you qualify for the team, then this is the terms on which your extensions already happened, rather than get into this situation now where the coach has, and rightly so, he can say, I deserve this much if you want me to take, or I need this many years extension, because he's proven that he can do what he was brought in to do. But at the same time, like, if suppose they don't want to go with him, or he chooses to go elsewhere and he gets a better offer, the federation shouldn't be stuck in a position where now it'd be terrible to go and look for a brand new coach now to prepare for a tournament when there's very little games in between for the new coach to get accustomed to. So I think both sides need to protect themselves in this situation. And all credit to him. I think it's been very, very tough the last couple of years, and a lot of people don't give enough credit for that with COVID, not enough matches being able to be played, players in a bio bubble. So when he did get the players, there's criticism and this time last year around the SAF Cup saying, the way the team's playing. But if you look at, I was rewatching some of those games from the SAF, he played certain players in certain positions. You've got an understanding like, okay, this guy I can rely on. Like I can rely on a list in these games, and maybe I can't rely on a certain other player. And you fall into what was his best players. And, the friendly games, I don't really take too much into the heavy defeats in some of those friendly games, because at least we're playing better opposition. We're not just playing Nepal all the time, or, those kind of teams, or some Cameroon C team in an Nehru Cup. We're playing proper opposition. You learn which players can handle it. And when it's come to the crunch in the qualifying games, they did the result. They got the results, and everyone said you should beat Cambodia at home. You should get past Afghanistan. You should get past Hong Kong, and that's exactly what he did. So, all credit to him. At the end of the day, results matter, and he got the results. And now I think he should be given the opportunity to build upon those results.
This is my controversial take on this, because I have always stood by Stimaj. I always said he should get a chance to see his mission through. And we've had debates on this on our show, everything. I think Stephen Constantine gets a lot of credit now in retrospect. But if you look at it, both of them qualified similar ways. They didn't make it through the first thing. The Stimaj had a more tougher time, let's say, because in terms of the fact that he had COVID, and they did play tougher oppositions in friendly, so those results didn't go his way either. Plus, I don't think Stimaj is all that honest. That's one thing, or people talking about Stimaj to us are all that honest. One of the two is right. Because he was supposed to have the knowledge of Indian football when he came in, and he came in here, he was like, there is no strikers. So if you had the knowledge, you would have known that there was no strikers. So those kind of things. But I think Stephen Constantine gets a lot of credit in retrospect. Not to say he did a bad job, he did a good job. I think Stimaj should be given the time now, because Constantine's time is done.
Yeah, look, football fans are fickle. I mean, the best way sometimes, the comment section when you're watching these games, because nowadays a lot of games are streamed on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. So there's always a comment section on the site. Now, at the start of the game, when, start of the game's like any boxing game or a UFC thing where, you're sparring, you're trying to just sort of figure out one another's thing. And you'll get all the comments, coach is useless, this player should have been picked, that player should have been picked, et cetera. And God forbid India go down by a goal, then sack the coach, blah, blah, blah. It'll be whether it was Constantine out or Stimaj out. That's just typical what you expect from certain fans. And then the moment that 1-0 down, it becomes a 4-1 victory. You look at the comments at the end, everything's brilliant. The player who plays for that particular person's club was the best thing since sliced bread, and so on and so forth. So I think people like us who watch a lot of Indian football, we have a bit more of a balanced view on it. We know the difficulties that Steam matches had. We also know the difficulties that Constantine probably would have had. And some of it's similar. Some of it is the league that the boys are playing in. There's not enough games. Everybody knows that. Everyone's commented on it. But that's the cards you're dealt with. And you know that when you take the job, that it is what it is. The good thing is it's getting better. Or the proposed plans for the ISL, the I-League, and the number of games, Super Cup, etc., Durand Cup, it is moving in the right direction. So in the future, at least you're taking away some of the standard excuses which national team coaches have. The striker situation, that's not the federation's responsibility in a way, that's the club's responsibilities as well. Yes, federation can help in certain ways at youth levels as well as at the lower league levels, whether it's a second division, state leagues, where you start putting limits on foreign players. But there's obviously a balancing act as well. You've got to make the game popular as well. So I think that's a fine line. But yeah, Santosh Trophy proved it. You've got guys who can score goals and make for entertaining football. And so it's not that it's not possible. Nobody in India can score. It's not like all the Santosh Trophy games went 0-0, went to penalty shootout. No, there were some thrilling games, some high scoring, questionable defending, but all in all, it was entertaining. So I think, there are steps in the right direction. And I think I completely agree with you. I think Steve Match doesn't get enough credit in that respect. And he should obviously be given the job to continue now what he started. And then, based on that, afterwards, you can put clauses in that if he gets to the next round of the Asian Cup, then an extension happens, or if not, then maybe they can opt to move in a different direction.
Yes. Now we will talk about the leagues, because this is why I like speaking to you, Brad. You give me good segues. So going into the league, into the ISL, new calendars proposed. Super Cup starts with the Durand Cup, and there is more matches now. The league also might have more matches now, which I'm not really sure what's the scene there. So how do you look at this situation now? Things are improving. Let's focus on the ISL now. We'll talk about the leagues later.
Yeah. I think a preseason tournament's vital. I mean, when I started getting involved in the ISL about 7 years ago, every team was jetting off to Spain or Portugal or Turkey or Brazil, all sorts of, basically like a little preseason holiday and money-making opportunities for everyone involved and photo ops for the players. And then they'd come back, and the reality was you're still playing in, whether it's Kolkata, Goa, in Indian conditions, you're not playing in, picturesque Marbella or wherever you were. And all those preseason results meant nothing. I mean, you'd have teams beating some Spanish team 10-0 or claiming to beat some Thai team, which the Thai team would later then refute, saying, no, we didn't even play you. And we're getting to a semblance of a normal league whereby preseason is held in the same country that you play in. The only reason to go abroad for preseason is commercial or lack of facilities. And now I think the good thing is facilities have improved. I think clubs have their own infrastructure where they can train and have a preseason. You don't have to go abroad. As I'm talking to you, it's absolutely pelting it down with rain here in Goa, but we can still train over here. The facilities are, improved to the level where you can deal with this weather. I think we need to get to a situation where we can have little mini tournaments, whether it's a Durand Cup or whether I think teams host their own. Like, Arsenal used to an Arsenal trophy, or there was one which Ajax used to have, like small little 4 teams get together, play over a course of over a week. And fans also get a little taste of the new signings. So it's not just all on social media that you get to see your new signings. And I think that would be a great way to take the game to different places as well. You don't have to play in your particular home state if weather conditions don't suit playing in July, August in your state. But from a player's perspective, it's great. They can start reporting into training, have less of an off season, because in the past few years we've had off seasons longer than the season, and we've almost had 8-month off season for a 4-month season. So we're flipping that equation the right way now. I think we just need to do a few more tweaks where I think the Super Cup and all these, like what we talked about with to help the national team, can the Super Cup, can the Durand Cup have rules where maybe more Indian players get an opportunity or more younger players get an opportunity? Can we have an opportunity where I-League teams and ISL play one another more often? So you get a direct comparison, pre and post tournament as well, as opposed to just in the past, what's happened in the Super Cups is a lot of the teams have lost interest at that stage. So it's just
Yeah,
don't give
that
them
was
more
not a
time.
good tournament at the end.
Exactly. So we've got to figure out a way so it's not teams just going through the motions. There is some kind of an incentive for it. And then, from a viewing point of view, that's great for us. If we got football all the way into May and starting off in the end of August, September, that's brilliant.
Yes. Now we'll talk about the other leagues. Let's talk about the I League. A lot of talks about how that's going to be the number one league now because of something written in the sports code. But we know the truth. That's not probably not going to happen. I'm going to say probably because nothing is absolutely certain in Indian football. But let's say as close to certainty as probably can be. That's what we think. So, what do you think of the future of the I League now?
Well, if all the reports that we've all been reading and that's led to believe, if the winners of the I League can now get into the ISL, then that's great. It's great incentive for I League teams, and you might see a lot more teams coming back in. You might see the likes of Chennai City coming in. You might see other former legendary teams from the I League coming back in, because there's an incentive to play at the top level. Because some of the teams that pulled out felt, if we're going to win the I League and not compete at an Asian stage, why are we competing in this? So the fact that the ISL winners now get into the AFC Champions League is great. So, which wasn't the case way back when I League was the number one league. You had to go through the qualifying stages, and you'd normally drop down into the AFC Cup, as was the case when I was at BFC. So there's a great incentive for I League teams to now build yourselves properly. So you're not just building for a shorter season, a bio bubble season, or whatever. You're building with a longer term. There's a 3-year. You can, as an I League team now, you can have a 3-year plan. You can say, let's, like a Srinidhi might have a plan. We'll come in, stabilize ourselves. Next year, we'll try and compete for a top spot and put contingency plans in place. And what if we do qualify for the ISL? Are we in a position both on the field and off the field to compete against those teams? And going back to what we were talking about earlier, the Durand and the Super Cup and other tournaments of that give you an idea that, okay, we're not far off of them, or we are too far off of them. Maybe our foreigners aren't on par, or, our Indian youth are not on par with them. So I think it's a great platform for I-League teams. And also I think it makes I-League teams get a little bit more serious, because we've seen it in the past few years where some I-League teams have been put together just for the sake of it, almost to not finish bottom, I'd say. Some of them don't even have their own grounds. And so now by putting in all these conditions, you can make sure that only the proper teams are there. So we can get back to the old days of the I-League, because at the end of the day, even once again, this season, it came down to the last round. I-League games, the season as such is always a thrilling season to watch. And it does, good players do crop up from there. I just think it'd be nicer to have a bit more of a competitive, stronger I-League rather than the way it was, where it was broken up in half and you have a bottom half and a top half. And I think relegation will definitely make sure that every game is competitive.
Yes, now we'll talk about the I-League 2, but we're going to talk about I-League 2 in a slightly different manner. From a coaching perspective, because I'm in Bangalore, I saw Khalid Jamil being unveiled by FCBU. That's the man who has coached East Bengal. This is the man who took Aizawl to the title. This is the man who took Northeast United to the playoffs for the first ever time. So he's top of the food chain in terms of achievements as a football coach. He has to drop down to an I-League 2 team to get a good chance. And now he's put his reputation on stake, because I-League 2, as you know, is a difficult league to get out of. So he has to do the Super Division, then he has to get to the I-League, try and qualify for the I-League and all those things. So he's got a lot of things on his back. So other great coaches that we have, at least in terms of achievements, Sanjoy Sen is an assistant coach, and there are so many people assisting. People like you are also there. You and Richard, again, two coaches who are again doing other jobs than coaching. So how difficult is it for an Indian coach in the system? And we'll talk it through the I-League 2 Khalid Jamil situation.
See, I think take Khalid's specific case. It's the cliche thing. You're only as good as your last job, right? So whatever he's done in the past with Aizawl was a long time ago. You look at it later with whether it's with East Bengal or whether it's with last season with Northeast United. He didn't get Northeast United into the playoffs last year. That was the previous season. So you judged on what happened the previous season. What I'm led to believe, he had some offers from some ISL teams as an assistant. They fell through in the last minute for, I don't know the truth, for various reasons. But the reality of it is, if you look at simple economics, the amount that an Indian assistant gets in an ISL team, because most assistants, they're not the assistant, they're not the number one assistant. There's normally a foreign coach who brings his own assistant coach or first team coach, whatever the title you want to give it. And then there's the Indian assistant coach. If you look at the salaries of those Indian assistant coaches, it's probably comparable with maybe an I-League head coach. And in some cases now, the I-League head coach, apart from the top 2 or 3 teams, is less than that. So if you're a coach and you've got a family, you've got a coaching licenses that you're paying off, or you need to make a living, you're going to try and look for the job that's pays the best and pays consistently. So there's only a few of them in the ISL, and because of the competition, clubs can afford to pay less, because if the person's not really involved that much in the day-to-day, the clubs don't really have to go out and get top dollar and pay for the best, because they're not looking for a head coach. Like if everyone was competing after, let's say, Clifford Miranda or Khalid and a couple of others for Sanjay Sen, as you mentioned, other names of that, as a head coach of an ISL team, then the pure market economics, demand, supply, these guys would get better. But because it's just to fill a role at the moment, which has to be filled, it's different. Now, if a second division team comes up, whether let's say FCBU or some other new team that wants to come into the I-League and is strongly pushing for it, and if they're paying you better, or they give you a multiple year contract, which gives you job stability, most coaches would pick that over maybe the glitz and glamour of the ISL, or the uncertainty in the I-League. So I don't think coaches are that sort of bothered or passionate about saying, like players give you that ego. Sometimes players are like, I'm an ISL player, I'm not dropping down to I-League. I think coaches are a bit more pragmatic. You're like, listen, if it's a good organization, there's good systems in place, because you might be with an I-League team where you don't get to pick your lineup, where the owner is picking your lineup. You don't have a proper training ground. You only had a training ground last year because of the
we all know who that is. Yeah.
So you could be better off being in a second division setup which is properly structured. You might be able to work properly. You might be able to plan your season and have a longer season. Look, if you take a Shillong team, for example, now, and somebody offers a young coach, I would recommend a young coach. If young coaches ask me, like, what should I do? I said, listen, take a team, maybe like a Rinthi or someone. You've got at least 10 to 15 games now, the Shillong League, which has just started, Shillong Premier League. You've got that as effectively your preseason. Then by the time November comes around, you would have played in a Meghalaya Invitation Cup tournament there as well, where you might play some outside teams, get to know the strength. You could play Durand like FC Bengaluru United did last year, then get into the I-League. You could feasibly have, second division, you could feasibly have a 20, 25 game season, or even longer, which you won't get as an ISL assistant coach, let's say, right? You might just you might be given the Super Cup game for the Durand Cup. So in terms of, as a coach, getting to actually be on the field, take training sessions, be on the sidelines for match days, you might get more by being with the second division team. So you've got to weigh the balance up and say, is that what I want to do? And if you miss that side of the coaching, then I think that's a better prospect. Obviously, the finances are one of the factors and the job stability, but I don't think of it as like what a lot of people are saying, Khalid had to step down. I don't think it's a step down. I think it's a sideways step. Coaching is coaching. If you're not coaching with an ISL team, which is what I think his alternative was, it was an assistant coach role with an ISL team, or coaching every day and you plan the sessions, you take the thing, and you dictate everything with the games, with the recruitment and everything. I think a lot of coaches would pick the second division option.
Yes, I agree with the same. It's a good challenge for him. It's a good project for him. Let's see where it goes. Now, this is the last topic, and this is a bit of a debate that I wanted to have because we are also running out of time. So let's do this. Prad, Ashik Kurunian, the overwhelming comment is that he had a bad time. His move to BFC has failed. Now, I can't refute that it is not a successful move, of course. But this story or the narrative that he played as a left back all the time, I think has to change. Because you and I know, at least like in the beginning, he played up front or came off the bench and tried a little bit. Then obviously at that time, Carles in the last podcast that he did spoke about why he couldn't play. So he played him as a left back. But then again, he ended up playing up front in the crunch games in the semi-final against ATK second leg. He scored the goal. He was playing on the right wing. The next year, he had a good season, but he missed most of it because of injury. Last season, he ended up playing most of it up front again. So it's not completely on the club, is it? It's a lot to do with him as well. This would be my argument.
I think I'll go the other way and say it's a lot to do on the club, but not necessarily a lot to do on the coaches. So what I mean by that, I was saying it's not necessarily Carlos's fault.
Yes, yeah.
Because if the club don't recruit, like the cliche thing is you should have 2 players for every position. If the club had 2 left backs, then when Ashik's not doing certain things as a right winger or left winger or in a position that, let's say, Carlos wanted him to do up front, that's the coach's responsibility then to coach the player to do that. That's the job. Unfortunately, in the ISL, you don't get enough time to coach. It's more managing because games come very, very quickly. There's little training time in terms of how much recovery time with the games. But if you're at a club for multiple years of that and the same coach has been there, the coach should be able to fix those problems because you were not recruited as a left back. You were recruited as an attacking player to play on the wings. And then obviously the injury happened and all that. But after that, the next coach coming in and the next coach coming in, we're using him as a left back. It's primarily because I think they probably looked in their bench and thought, we don't have any other options, and that's why I have to play him. But then you got a question, were they looking right, or was the advice inside the club right? Because they did have a left back. You had Roshan Singh, who was now emerged and broken into the national team. So you had a player who was more than capable of playing that position. And we've seen him obviously playing in BDFA Super Division. So it's just a question of maybe they didn't have the confidence to give a young player that opportunity. So you got to give credit to Marco there. Marco's allowed a young player to come in, broken in. That's meant, well, we don't need you to play left back, Ashik. So you've either got to play up front or move on and move to another club. So I think it's great for him to get this move to ATK Mohun Bagan, because I think he certainly won't be playing. I hope so. I hope he won't be playing as a left back over there. Because I think if you look at it even for the national team, when he came on in those games and played in an attacking position, he is a threat. You play against stronger opposition, Middle Eastern teams, when you are going to be defending for large chunks of the game, having strong physical, he's improved on that aspect actually. He can hold himself up against players. He can hold on to the ball. And he still has that pace to break on the counter. You need players that are playing further up the field and not as a left back. Because I think we've got enough options at left back. And possibly, I would say, better options than him at left back.
Yes.
But in attacking positions, left-footed, I don't think we have better options than him.
Yes, absolutely. So nobody's denying that he's his best placed up front, right? Like that's his natural habitat, let's say. But as a left back, do you think at the time when he came into the club, obviously left wing was Sunil. There was no way he was breaking into that space. Udanta was at that time someone who they really rated very highly, who had a good performance a year before. The only option was to play up front. And I think there was a period of time when they 3 played up front, but they didn't score much or do much damage other than Sunil being the only lone scorer.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, I've seen him play as a 9 and the talk about I had him at Pune as well. I don't think he's great with his back to goal because his main threat is when he's facing the goal. But look, when you move to a club like BFC and you're a left-sided player and you know Sunil Chetri there, there's 2 ways of mindset approaching that. Do you join that club thinking, I'm going to be better than him, I'm going to make him go on the bench and I'm going to play? Or do you go with am I going to try and assist him and get as many assists and make sure I play in the team, right? Or try and make a partnership with Chetri or whoever the striker is. So I think some players, it's how you react as a player. I think that's why I admire Liston a lot. He's gone to a club where, like ATK Mohun Bagan, a lot of people said, oh, you're just going to go there, sit on the bench. He won't play. They've got Manveer, they've got David Williams, they've got XYZ. But he went there and he's kicked on from his season that he had at Hyderabad. And I think that's what you want to see young players do, saying, listen, now this is my turn. It doesn't matter if there's a legend playing there. I'm going to show you what I can do. And look, as coaches, if the guy's producing week in, week out, you're going to play him and then you'll adjust things around him because, Sunil's versatile. We've seen with the national team, he doesn't play out on the left. So I think if Ashik had made that position his own, or he came in when Udanta wasn't on form, he could have made that position his own. As you said, a little bit to blame on Ashik. He didn't really, provide BFC fans, you could say, a full glimpse of his potential. He just showed it in fits and bursts, like that semi-final here and there. But consistently over his time over there, you'd have to say it was a bit of a disappointment. And the easy excuse is, oh, I was made to play at left back.
Yeah, I think that's the narrative I wanted to break, because I think that was a bit of an excuse. But like you said, there are so many underlying issues there as well. So this is the quick fire episode that we are ending right now. We'll put this out. We'll do this every other week throughout the season, and let's hope that once we get closer to the season, there will be a lot more arguments that we can have, like the Ashik discussion. So yeah, that's the plan here, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Brad, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, mate. See you soon.
See you.